Good morning, everyone. At this time, I'd like to call to order the July 18th, 2024 regular meeting of the North County Transit District Board of Directors. Before we begin, members of the public who may be viewing the meeting on the district's YouTube page, please note that in order to make a public comment during the meeting, you must connect to the meeting using the Zoom link provided on the agenda. In addition, you must also register by sending an email containing your name or phone number and the agenda item on which you wish to speak to clerk@nctd.org. I will now ask Suhel Rodriguez, our magnificent clerk of the board, to call roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Board Chair Edson.
Present.
Vice Chair Patel.
Here.
Member Martinez. Board Alternate Krantz.
Oh, you need a pencil.
Here.
Thank you.
I gotta use the pencil.
Yeah, gotta use. the
Here
pencil.
again.
Board Member Garcia.
Here, using the pencil.
Board Alternate Joyce.
Present.
Desmond.
Here.
Board Member Jenkins.
Here.
Board Member Contreras.
Present.
Board Alternate Coleman.
Here.
This completes the roll.
Thank you, ma'am. Board Member Joyce, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Suhel, please provide a safety brief and review evacuation procedures.
Yes, Madam Chair. In case of an emergency, I will dial 911. In case of an evacuation, please exit the building behind you. Do not take the elevator. Once clear to the building, do not re-enter unless cleared to do so by emergency personnel. There are fire extinguishers and first aid kits in this room. There is also a portable defibrillator if needed. There is staff on hand trained on CPR procedures if needed also. This concludes my safety brief.
Thank you. And do we have any changes to the agenda?
Yes, Madam Chair, the board agenda document was revised to reflect a correct quarter for consent item number 4. The revised agenda was sent out to the board. It has been updated on the NCT website, and an errata sheet has been provided also to the board.
Thank you. Suhel, are there any non-agenda public comments today?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you. At this time, public registration to provide general public comments will end. Before we proceed, I have a couple of quick protocol items to share. First, I ask board members to please hold your comments and questions until after each agenda item has been presented. Next, when the time comes for board member questions or comments, please raise your hand or catch my eye and wait until you're called upon to speak. And when it is your turn to speak, please turn on and speak into your microphone. To do this, I guess this is a little behind the curve here, but you can do this by using the pencils provided and selecting mic on, or this says talk on the screen in front of you. This will ensure that your comments are heard by those listening to our meeting online. Our first item is approval of the minutes of the June 20th, 2024 regular board meeting. May I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve, Contreras. Second.
Motion by Contreras, second by Patel. Please call the vote, or please vote.
Thank you. On the motion of Board Member Contreras, seconded by Vice Chair Patel, to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting on June 20th, 2024. Motion passes. Board Member Joyce abstains.
Thank you, Suhel. There are 13 consent items on our agenda today. Suhel, have any members of the public requested that any consent items be pulled?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you. At this time, public registration to speak on consent items has ended. Do any board members wish to pull any consent items? Board Member Martinez?
Yes, no, I don't wish to pull, but I would like to know if I could ask a question, clarifying question.
Certainly.
Okay. Okay, so under item 1, successful awards, there is a battery electric bus community project funding of $500,000. Where will that be used and how will that money be used?
Yeah, thank you for that question. It could go to a few different things. It could be replacement of vehicles, which honestly would probably not yield too much of a buzz for us, but some of the infrastructure, either planning of future electric routes or utilization for future of equipment would be utilized through that funding.
Okay, great. I have another question if I may.
Certainly.
Okay, on item 2, under performance, I think that's always really important to see and we had some positives. That's really good. What I wanted to know is were things changed, routes changed? What do you think contributed to the increase in ridership? And if you
Yeah,
don't know now, that's fine. I'm just curious at a later date would be great.
yeah, we actually, we would love to do a full dive into that if the board would like. I think what you're seeing is a combination of a lot of things. Post-pandemic, I think you're seeing sort of a resurgence of return to work. I do think it's a combination of the excellent work that our planning department has done to shift priorities. Our peak has changed a little bit, so maybe making minor adjustments to some of the schedules that exist. I think it's the Youth Opportunity Pass. There are a lot of things I think that sort of impact post-pandemic, this sort of return to normalcy that I think we're seeing a little bit of not only a shift in our ridership to when they're riding, but the fact that they are riding. I think it also has a lot to do with some of the initiatives we have in safety and security and other arenas to make sure that people feel like they can use the service reliably and safely. So it's a combination, I think, of all those things, but we would love to come back to the board and give a sort of an overview of each different mode of service and kind of the things that we see within that may be positive trends in ridership and honestly some opportunities as well.
I would appreciate that if any other board members would.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions regarding the consent calendar?
No, but I'll go ahead and move to approve Contreras, and just fantastic questions. And I just want to say, Board Member Martinez, that I'm 100%, down for what you're saying.
Okay, so we have
Second.
a motion by Contreras, a second by Bhat Patel. Please vote.
On the motion of Board Member Contreras, seconded by Vice Chair Bhat Patel to approve consent items 1 through 13, motion passes.
Thank you. There is a single information item on today's agenda. As this is an informational only item, no vote will be required. This item pertains to the notice of preparation of a draft environmental impact report for the Lausanne Rail Realignment Project. Mary Dover, our Chief of Staff, will be joined by Sandag staff to present this item. I'm sure that recently many of you have read or heard news stories pertaining to the realignment of the tracks off of the fragile Del Mar Bluffs. Today we'll have an opportunity to hear directly from Sandag about the NOP and to ask questions so that we may learn additional details and perhaps clarify some of the conflicting information that has been circulating. Mary, and it looks like Mario, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, members of the board. I am joined here today by Mario Orso, his Sandag's new Chief Executive Officer. Welcome to NCTV's board, as well as Danny Vey and Keith Greer to talk about the environmental and project-specific elements of the project. So the purpose of today's discussion is to provide the board with an overview of where Sandag is in the project to move NCTD's tracks off of the Del Mar Bluffs. As you all know, NCTD and Sandag have been studying bluff erosion and bluff retreat and the necessary stabilization efforts since the 90s. The first stabilization effort was completed in 2002, and 3 subsequent projects have been completed to stabilize the Del Mar Bluffs. Currently, Sandag and NCTD are in the construction process for phase 5 of bluff stabilization. In total, about $120 million has been invested into the stabilization efforts at Del Mar. The phase 5 project has a design life of about 30 years, which is critical to make sure that NCTD and Sandag can study what the long-term vision for the Del Mar Bluffs is. Sandag has been studying this for a very long time. This is not an exhaustive list of all of their efforts, but it's just the highlights. In 2007, Caltrans and the FRA released a Lausanne Corridor Program Environmental Impact Report and Statement. In this report, The report contemplated 2 potential tunnel alignments through Del Mar. In 2017, Sandag completed a conceptual alignment study that came up with 5 potential alignments for a tunnel through off of the Del Mar Bluffs. In 2023, Sandag released the San Diego to Sorrento Valley Double Track Alternatives Analysis Report. This report refined those 5 alignments and took 2 to additional analysis for consideration. Between then and now, Sandag has done public outreach to reach out to stakeholders for additional alignment options and feedback on what is being proposed, which leads us to now. A notice of preparation of a draft environmental impact report was released on June 4th. Sandag is soliciting additional public comments on 3 potential alignments for the project. So now I'll pass it over to Mario and the rest of the Sandag team to talk about that process and where we are in the project as a whole.
Hi, how are you? My name is Mario Orso. I'm the new Sandag CEO, and I'm very happy to be here and appreciative of the invitation. The team is really going to dive into more details. I just wanted to open it up, as I had said in other forums. So this is a big project. It's complex. And tomorrow we're closing the notice of preparation for the CEQA portion of it. We will be beginning a value analysis process also. It's within the normal process of a big project like this to do that evaluation of cost benefit within it and also take into consideration all the comments that have come in. I really want to highlight that the team is going to be really diving into a lot of the comments, the questions that have come in, and really look into what are the best options to pursue so we are good stewards of the funds that we got to pursue the 30% engineering into it. So diving into the alignments, making sense, the public comments. This is the point in the process, which is normal, that a lot of changes can occur. And I think that's very important. Also, another important element to highlight is that we do not have a NEPA lead agency yet for the NEPA clearance. We have the CEQA. So therefore, a notice of intent, which is similar to a notice of preparation, will be coming out, and that will be the perfect timing to put in or update the notice of preparation in CEQA and align it with the notice of intent of NEPA and make all the changes that come out based on the value analysis, the evaluation of the comments, and so on. Now, when we have mega projects of this size, nobody's going to be happy. So this process is to try to find that common ground and find the best options from an economic perspective, from a social perspective, and from an environmental perspective. So the team will be updating you on where they are right now, but I did want to put that in perspective there. Thank you, and I'll pass it on to the team here.
All right, thanks, Mario. My name's excuse me. My name's Danny Vey. I'm the Rail Planning Program Manager at Sandag, and I'm the project manager on the realignment efforts here at Lausanne Rail Realignment. And I'm just going to go real briefly over the project goals. I think in Mary's slides, I think she captured the need of this project, which is ultimately to get the tracks off the bluffs, and that is our first project goal. We've seen investments for decades now, and these are all temporary improvements. We need to find a long-term solution for the bluffs, and that's really our primary goal of this project. At the same time, we want to minimize community impacts, and we recognize that Solana Beach, Fairgrounds, City of Del Mar, City of San Diego, there's communities that are here, and there's no open space, there's no logical alignment here that is perfect, that avoids communities. So we want, as we're looking at alternatives and we're looking at solutions for this, we want to minimize all those community impacts. And if we're making an investment of this size, we're talking about realigning of a rail corridor. We have an opportunity to improve travel time. And we can do that by straightening out some of those slow curves that are along the bluffs today, as well as double tracking and closing that single track bottleneck that allows trains to run more reliably and more frequent. And another benefit is coastal access and safety. So if we're removing the tracks off the bluffs, there's an opportunity to enhance these coastal resources and remove those pedestrian and train conflicts that happen on the bluffs and at Coast Boulevard. So there's another goal of the project. And last but definitely not least is our ability and our goal to preserve those wetlands, both in San Dieguito Lagoon and Los Penasquitos Lagoon. And Mary kind of hit on the past planning efforts, and certainly we've been working on this a really long time. Mary definitely highlighted a lot of the key efforts here. One of them was that I'll just highlight is with the Del Mar Bluff in 2022 with the Del Mar Bluff Stabilization Project. Coastal Commission has conditioned Sandag to look at removing the tracks off the bluffs. So that's part of the reason why we're doing this. And next, I'm going to pass it over to Keith Greer, and we're going to jump to the details of the CEQA elements.
Thanks, Danny. Hello, my name is Keith Greer. I'm the Deputy Director of Environmental Compliance and Climate at Sandag. And my team will be working through the process to get an environmental document prepared for this project. And I kind of wanted to explain there's a state process called the California Environmental Quality Act, which we'll talk about today. And then there's a federal process that's parallel called the National Environmental Policy Act. And that's issued or run by a federal lead agency, which, as Mario said, was we haven't identified yet or hasn't been identified. I think you're all familiar in your jobs as City Council and North County Transit Board members about California Environmental Quality Act. It's the process where we have to analyze environmental impacts and look at the consequences of various alternatives, which ultimately goes to the boards and bodies for their consideration, along with other things, cost, constructability, and other social and economic issues. So in this case, we're doing an environmental impact report. It's the most complicated, biggest type of environmental document there is. And the first part of that environmental impact report, where we are right now, is the notice of preparation. And it is just the process to say, we are considering doing an EIR. What should we be considering as part of that document? So it's the very start of the process. It consists of a lot of public input, which we're getting a lot on. So we've issued that notice of preparation on June 4th. And as of right now, we have had over 900 public comments, which is the most I've ever heard of on NOP. So in that regard, it's good because we're getting a lot of good feedback. So we had a CEQA scoping meeting. After the CEQA process, this shows the rest of the process consisting of technical studies for analysis, compiling those technical analysis, creating a draft environmental impact report, which is reviewed by the public, comments that are provided. Those comments are provided in writing. We answer and respond in writing, and ultimately, somewhere down the line, we create a final environmental report for decisions by a Sandag board. So that's the process right now. And again, the timelines up there, they're up there for a benchmark, but they can change. The main important here is there's a lot of public input that's involved in the public environmental process. One of the things the notice preparation did is outlined a set of objectives. And why these are important, because these are how various alignments or alternatives are analyzed against. Danny mentioned 5 or 6 different goals. We've taken those goals and we've tried to kind of clarify what that means from the environmental process. So I'm going to paraphrase this. One is to move off the tracks into a more service reliable area, something less environmentally, I guess we call it, fragile. The second part was to maintain rail passenger service to the existing stations and including a 22nd Ad District Fairgrounds special event platform. Third would be to minimize community impacts. Fourth, to avoid or minimize biological, cultural, and recreational impacts. Fifth, to help maintain the goals of our regional plan and our 2018 state rail plan. And finally, to improve coastal access and safety. Right now, there's a lot of, as you know, I don't have to explain this, a lot of train pedestrian conflicts in the current location, and we're hoping to improve that with this project. So we have gotten comments back on the objectives, and this is an appropriate place to do that as part of the NOP process. But by far, the most comments we received are on the alignments. And I kind of wanted to take a step back and explain how the alignments in the NOP were identified, and then to clarify that these are not set in stone. The NOP is the part to get comments back and to make refinements in the future. Danny mentioned there has been a slew of special studies, planning studies done in this area. 2007, the Caltrans Division of Rail and the Federal Railroad Administration looked at the corridor, the whole Los Angeles corridor, and they did what we call a program environmental impact report impact statement. So it's the programs, the top level, and subsequent projects do a project-specific environmental document. So there's the program at the top and then specific project level environmental review. What this project level environmental review is to look at the segments between Sereno Valley and Solana Beach, and how do you make that connection by realigning the rail off the bluffs. We have done 2 series of planning studies. What you see here on this, all this purple spaghetti map, consists of 12 different options or opportunities to connect up the existing stations. And they all consist of a tunnel. You can probably ask yourself, why do we need to do a tunnel? Well, the grade between Sereno Valley and Solana Beach is flat, and right in between it is a hill, that Del Mar Hill, as you kind of see as you're driving down the I-5 towards San Diego. So the only opportunity if you're moving off the bluffs is to do a tunnel. All the alternatives being identified here consist of a portal to the south, portal to the north, and a tunnel segment between them. So this is the 12 alignments we brought to the through workshops over the fall and into the winter. And we asked the public, what do you think about these? And we actually gave them pencils and had them workshop this. And what they came back with was this orange spaghetti map. So this is about 38 different alignments, but you can see there's some prevailing themes. I think intriguingly, some people have said, put it in the ocean. Other people have said, leave it on the bluffs, just put a bridge structure up there. And then other ones said, you know what, the alignments that you're proposing, there's some opportunities to move it underneath Del Mar and City of San Diego in a tunnel. And then you see a lot of people said, put it on the I-5. So how do you take this purple and orange spaghetti and come up to something that says we're going to move it for environmental review? Right now, you can't move 50 possible alignments to environmental review. So the idea is to develop what they call a range of alternatives. There's a range of alternatives, which I'll go into next, are identified through the secret process that says it meets most of the project objectives. So those objectives I first described to you, how does a project meet most of those objectives, but are still engineering feasible to construct? And then have less environmental impacts. So that rule of range of alternatives, you compare those against each other. There's no minimum number. We can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different alternatives. And there's no, it's just a rule of reason, what can be accomplished. The other thing I want to mention is there also is a requirement to do a no project. And what the no project means is continue as if this project right now is not acted upon. So we've done over the last 20 years, 5 stabilization projects. It's reasonable to assume we do a 6th project and we continue doing emergency repairs. And that's what the no project will be analyzed in the environmental document. So what this looks like in a big picture world is we've done we call a screening report. We've taken the purple spaghetti, the orange spaghetti, we sieved it through all those 50 different alignments through which ones meet most of the project objectives, which ones are engineering feasible. If they met both of those high bars, then we looked at them in terms of environmental consequences and other considerations, and advanced 3 into the scoping process. What the NOP has is these 3 alignments, and I'll put a caveat here. These are not final alignments. These are what we have in the NOP to get comments on. They can be, new alignments can be added, alignments can be dropped, alignments can be modified. And the idea is it's an iterative back and forth process up into the final EIR. The other thing I will mention here is that there's no priority. There's no which one's preferred. You may have heard about like an environmental document has a proposed project or a preferred alternative. The NOP doesn't identify that. That has to be done in the draft EIR. But right now, we feel we want to understand the environmental consequences of these alternatives before we pick one as the preferred alternative. The environmental document will also have an environmentally superior alternative, which is kind of like the blinders just about the environmental issues, which one's environmentally superior. So that has to be done in the draft EIR, but for the NOP, we have not identified which one's preferred or proposed project. Finally, we talked a little about the federal process. This is a big project. It's going to require federal funds. As such, the federal government has to have environmental review under the National Environmental Policy Act. That federal entity will become what they call the lead federal agency, just like SANDAG's the lead agency for the state. That entity has not been identified yet. The state of California has been in discussions with the Department of Transportation, and they're going to identify both for this project and other rail projects up and down California, who could be that federal lead agency. Right now, we're hoping those negotiations and discussions conclude in the fall. But we have some time because they haven't identified, and even if they're identified in the fall, it's going to take them about 6 months to get up to speed. After they're up to speed, they'll start the scoping process, as Mario was describing, something similar to NOP called the Notice of Intent. And it gives us an opportunity to use these next 6 months to make modifications and bring forward any modifications to the notice of preparation at that time. Our goal at Sandag is to do one joint document. It makes no sense to do two documents simultaneously. We want to do one joint document, and the first stop of that would be the notice of intent process. So we want to use that cross time right now to take what's shown in NOP, take the comments that are received, by over 1,000 when it closes tomorrow, and to go through a value analysis process. And the value analysis includes all the cities, the transit owners and operators, Caltrans, and it goes through a technical and analytical process to say what other opportunities are out there. It doesn't limit to just what's in the NOP. All things are open right now. And that process, the goal of that group would be to say, here's what that group is recommending goes forward into the next series, which is the NOI and NOP process, which we document and bring to the federal lead agency. I can get into that a little bit more afterwards, but I want to conclude here just to say the comment period closes tomorrow. Here's the way to submit comments. We are getting a lot of comments, which is really good. With that, I'll turn it back over to your chief of staff.
Thanks, Mario, Keith, and Danny. So as Keith mentioned, the NOP comment period ends tomorrow. NCTD is planning to submit comments, and I wanted to give the board some key considerations that we used to craft NCTD's response to the NOP. So first and foremost, NCTD is the owner of the railroad right-of-way through the project area. NCTD owns the railroad from the San Diego County, Orange County line through the southern limits of Del Mar. NCTD is also designated by the Surface Transportation Board as a rail common carrier as it pertains to freight service. NCTD is the railroad of record designated by the Federal Railroad Administration. This is for the entire San Diego subdivision, including the parts that we don't own. That means that we're the entity responsible for maintenance and ensuring that the corridor is usable for NCTD services and other rail transportation services. Because of this, NCTD maintains shared use agreements with both Amtrak and BNSF, Metrolink also, but that's not pertinent to this project area. And those shared use agreements govern Amtrak and BNSF's use of our rail line, and it includes stipulations for what NCTD is responsible for to allow Amtrak and BNSF service to operate on the line. Because of these considerations, NCTD is considered a responsible agency under the California Environmental Quality Act as it relates to this realignment project. So in NCTD's response to Sandag's NOP, we first wanted to highlight the limited information that was included in the NOP. As Keith mentioned, this is a jumping off point for the draft environmental impact report. The draft EIR is going to give us more of the project specific details that will be able to determine what impacts NCTD will see from each of the alignments. So our comments in response to the NOP are very high level and include an overview of NCTD's priorities for things that we want to be included for consideration in the EIR. Top of mind is that we want to reinforce that because of NCTD's designation as a rail common carrier, the STB has to approve any realignment of the railroad. We also want Sandag to look at the impacts of construction to not only our operations, but the operations of Amtrak and BNSF through the area for any of the alignments. Also the operational feasibility for all forms of rail transportation for all of the alignments post-construction. The anticipated operation and maintenance costs. NCTD is the railroad of record, so therefore we must maintain any structure that's built on our rail line. So in order for us to determine the impacts of each alignment, we need to know what the anticipated maintenance costs and operation of any of the alignments will be. We currently have stations in Solana Beach and Sereno Valley. NCTD also received funding with Sandag to construct a new special events platform at the Del Mar Fair. So we want to make sure that any of the alignments at least maintain connectivity to all of the communities in that area. We don't want to lose any service to any of our customers through any of the alignments. We also want to know the impact of each alignment on travel times for all forms of rail transportation, whether that be a decrease in travel times or an increase in travel times. We want to make sure that we are aware of what our operations, Amtrak's operations, and BNSF operations will look like in each alignment. And because this is an environmental impact report, we also highlighted some environmental considerations for each of the alignments that Sandag should consider. So with that, I will take any questions, and the Sandag team is also available for any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mary. And thank you, Mario, Keith, and Danny. Appreciate the presentations. Suhail, has the public submitted written comments, or do we have any speakers on this item?
Yes, Madam Chair, we received a total of 5 public comments related to this item. They were sent to the board prior to the meeting and have been also posted on our website.
And do we have any public speakers?
We do not have any registered speakers today.
Thank you very much. At this time, public registration to speak on this item will end. There is no question. that-
I have a question.
I have some questions first.
I thought you said there was none, but okay.
So there's no public questions at this point. So there's no question that the tracks must be relocated off of the fragile bluffs. I think we all agree on that. The big questions are when and how best to do it. The district and 3 cities whose representatives serve on this board are all major stakeholders. So I anticipate some robust questions. I'm on my 8th year as a SANDAG and NCTD board member. Over the years, past planning efforts focused on rail relocation were reported to the SANDAG board. To the best of my knowledge, from 2007 until as late as 2023 with the purple string map, spaghetti string map, the north portal of the routes deemed worthy of study were all located within Del Mar or San Diego. Is that accurate? I think these are going to be some SANDAG questions. Thanks, Danny.
Yes, that's accurate.
Okay. The NOP mentions and touches on community outreach efforts. For a number of years, SANDAG staff has held outreach meetings with the cities of Del Mar and San Diego, their planning groups and their residents, to inform stakeholders of these specific alternatives and to work with them to refine them. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. We had several outreach meetings, notifications, even virtual sessions.
Okay, thank you. As SANDAG staff is already aware, in my role as deputy mayor of Solana Beach, I'm disappointed to report that stakeholder outreach was not performed with my city. Our entire council, our residents and businesses were all quite surprised by the inclusion of Alternative A in the NOP. We know that the 2023 purple spaghetti map shown on slide 9 did not include portals north of the Del Mar Fairgrounds. In a public comment sent to Monday's LoSAN board meeting, and I will share that comment with you, Madam Clerk. A Del Mar resident claimed that she and her coalition created Alternative A. When did Alternative A, which shifted project impacts north of Del Mar and into the city of Solana Beach, enter the picture?
So Alternative A is the result of the analysis that we did after the outreach day. So that orange spaghetti map, you can see all those lines that started farther north, went over to I-5 and through there. Like no one single person proposed that. It was a collection of several comments that have been collected over the last 6 months or so.
Okay, and were any of those comments from residents of Solana Beach saying, hey, bring the train over here, bring the tunnels over here?
And we didn't ask where they were from.
Okay, so when it was decided to, that Alternative A was something that would go in the NOP, why was no outreach performed with my city or other key stakeholders beyond the city of and residents of Del Mar before Alternative A was added to the NOP? For example, the fairgrounds, which are technically within the city of Del Mar, generate $680 million in annual economic impact to our region. On Monday, their board voted unanimously to oppose Alternative A due to A's impacts on the fairgrounds operation. During that meeting, they also cited a lack of stakeholder engagement prior to Alternative A being added to the NOP. So again, my question is, why was no stakeholder engagement performed beyond that small group?
Yeah, and our decision at that point, I mean, we weren't exclusive to Del Mar or to City of San Diego, but releasing the NOP is just the beginning of that conversation. So we're this is very at the beginning, right? And so when we sent mail postcards and we mailed them to residents all across the project area, including Solana Beach, and invited them to participate at our scoping meeting, like going forward, we're going to be working a lot more with the City of Solana Beach, as well as all the stakeholders around this project area.
Okay, there are 3 alternatives, A, B, and C, and 6 project objectives. How many project objectives do each of the alternatives meet?
So as you remember, one of the things is look at does the alternative meet the project objectives? Of those, we had all the project objectives in the purple alignments met the objectives. And of the remaining ones, we had 6 that met the project objectives, but of those, 1 was not engineering feasible. So there was 5. 5 that were at the same level as alternative A. But those, besides alternative A, what the other ones were kind of permutation, of what we've seen in B and C. So it said B and C covers off most of these other orange spaghettis, but what was different than B and C was a public alternative alignment. And that's what A was reflecting, kind of going around I-5, going underneath public lands and underneath Delmar Fair.
Okay, that wasn't actually my question. There are 6 project objectives.
There's 6 project objectives.
And alternative A, as I understand from the NOP, it says that it meets 4 project objectives.
That is
I
correct.
really only count 3, in my opinion. But alternatives B and C both state that they meet all 6 objectives.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Bullet 1 of the NOP under project objective is moving the existing rail off the bluff. NCTD's response to the NOP highlights the limited information included in the NOP. What exactly is the proposed project and what is the preferred project? Doesn't a project description need a location for all phases and components of construction, including staging, demolition of existing structures and timelines for construction? And without this information, how are stakeholders expected to study the impacts of the project and provide valid NOP comments?
So the NOP is an announcement. It is like an engagement announcement. So the wedding is going to happen in the future. That's the draft environmental impact report. Right now, it's just an announcement that we're considering having this project. It consists right now of 3 alternatives, and we want input on those alternatives because they can change. The preferred project or proposed project been used, that has to be identified in the draft EIR. It doesn't have to be identified in the NOP. And right now, what we're trying to understand is what's the environmental consequences of all 3 of those before staff can make a recommendation on which one's the preferred project or preferred alternative.
Thank you. In addition to providing limited information, quite a bit of information contained in the NOP is inaccurate or misleading. For example, page 8 of the NOP identifies the north portal of alternative A as the Fairgrounds North Portal. Isn't this portal, and you can see it on, I think, slide 22?
There it's got.
Isn't this portal, in fact, near the heart of Solana Beach, located just south of the existing train station at Loma Santa Fe Drive and nowhere near the Del Mar Fairgrounds?
Yeah, we've got that comment a couple times on the name. We've included here Solana Beach to show it is in Solana Beach. But that's an opportunity for us to reflect, change the NOP, add more detail. And when we come out with the future federal lead agency for the notice of intent, to revise the NOP and send it back out. We have the opportunity to make changes.
Well, so these postcards that came out and the NOP said these things and people said, well, why is Solana Beach concerned? If you identify things incorrectly, it's misleading. And so it was difficult for people to understand why Solana Beach might be concerned. On page 9 of the NOP, isn't the alternative A dubbed the I-5 alignment rather than the South Cedros Avenue or I-5 to Solana Beach 101 alignment, which would have been more in keeping with tagging the other North Portals names to the specific locations where they had the greatest community impact?
We can change those names accordingly. I-5 alignment was one that they understood in the past, but we can definitely reflect that in the future. And
Okay, this is at least the 4th time I've asked for this to be done, just saying publicly. The inclusion of alternative A with a portal in the heart of Solana Beach and in the middle of the 2nd busiest intercity passenger serving rail corridor in the US without any engagement with Solana Beach or with the transit agencies who operate on the rail line flies in the face of SANDAG's public outreach plan. and is contrary to Sandag's stated engagement campaign to ensure that open and transparent communications are made to the general public and to vested individuals and entities. Stakeholder engagement is vitally important. Please help me understand why key stakeholders such as impacted jurisdictions and other agencies beyond the city of Del Mar were not engaged before alternative A was added.
My response is it's very similar to what I said previously, and this is still the very beginning of the process, right? This is a line we're asking for feedback, and we're specifically including Solana Beach as this line is up. We're asking for feedback. This is the very beginning of that process, and we're having all of these comments, overwhelming response. Keith mentioned this is more than he's ever seen. And so all this feedback is really critical to help us, and all these comments are all now on the record. So we have them and we can take them and make refinements. So nothing's really been set in stone. We haven't really decided. Mario?
Could we have done better? Yes. Are we working on correcting our broader engagement? Yes. I think that's the first step. And that's why we're in this process. That's why we're doing the BA. That's why we're going to reissue the notice of intent, the notice of preparation more than anything, together with the notice of intent, if we don't do it even before. That's pretty much, we recognize that there's always room for improvement, and we're here.
Well, thank you for that. I have a great deal of respect for the many smart, kind, and talented Sandex staff members who I've had the pleasure of working with over the years, not for, but with. Although I cannot justify the lack of stakeholder engagement that occurred prior to the inclusion of alternative A in the NOP, I'm trying to understand why the NOP may have been rushed. With that in mind, I ask what funding is being used to conduct the EIR and if this funding has a sunset.
Yeah, so the state of California has identified $300 million for the project development of this particular project, Realign. And it has a sunset of 5. These are all state funds that are funding all this effort that you're seeing now in the environmental phase. And that was what we're driving. Yes, the sunset is through June 30th, 2027.
So does this explain why the NOP may have been rushed and the lack of stakeholder engagement occurred?
So the NOP process, there's nothing magical about it. It can be used as a way to get public input, which is why staff was thinking, hey, let's use the NOP process to get ideas from the public on this alignment. Again, that's the only thing that we were thinking about, which was how do we get public comments? How do we make them part of the record so we can make modification? Could we done better? Yes, Mario's right.
Okay. How long do you estimate construction of each of the alternatives will take from start to finish?
So in the 2023 alternatives analysis, when we looked at construction timeframes, we have alignments that are very similar to what B and C are, and those construction periods about 7 years. We recognize that A is much longer. We haven't done the full work to understand how long that construction duration is on A, but it could be longer.
Can you give me a guess?
I just don't want to speculate until we do work.
Okay, so I've heard you presented at our Solana Beach City Council meeting and other places, including Sandag, and I had heard something in the realm of anywhere from 10 to as much as twice as long years to do alternative A.
I mean, at this point, it's just purely speculating. I mean, we just don't know.
Okay, thank you. Will alternative A destroy or render obsolete the hundreds of millions of dollars in current and or soon to be built corridor infrastructure projects such as the existing grade separation and double track in Solana Beach and the upcoming $254 million shovel-ready San Diego Lagoon replacement bridge double track and special events fairgrounds platform.
Yeah, so if alternative A ends up being selected, we would have to analyze the either removal or repurpose of San Diego double track bridge and that platform and those improvements within the trench part of the San Diego double track project.
So in other words, they would all become obsolete, these investments. Thank you. Am I correct that in alternatives B and C, these items would not be obsolete?
You're correct.
Thank you. Please describe the difference in the special events platform in alternative A versus alternatives B and C. For example, I understand with alternatives B and C, the platform will remain at grade and functional as is. How about A?
You're absolutely right. So with alternatives B and C, those particular alternatives would tie in south of the new San Diego double track bridge. So the platform is not touched. For the new platform that will be constructed will not be touched. For alternative A, in order to get the rail alignment underneath the lagoon, underneath the fairgrounds, we have to be in a deep tunnel. And so it's like we've said, in the range of 70 to 80 feet below ground.
So 8 to 7 or 8 stories below ground.
Yep.
Thank you. How long will the tunnels be in each of the alternatives and how will they be vented?
I wrote that down.
Okay.
So in alternative A, the total length is 5 miles of tunnel. Alternative B, 3.3, and alternative C is the shortest at 2. The tunnels right now, the ventilations, it's only at the portal. So both locations in North and South Florence will be the ventilation.
Okay. On June 26th, Sandag acknowledged that there would be direct and indirect impacts to more than 60 naturally affordable residences and untold small businesses on South Cedros Avenue in Solana Beach. Among the comment letters received ahead of Monday's LoSAN board meeting, a resident of Del Mar who claims to have come up with alternative A also stated that alternatives B and C will take 50 homes in Del Mar by eminent domain. Is this true?
So there's a lot of missing information that's being presented out there. And what we're going to be doing is getting a frequently asked questions fact sheet to update that. We don't have, that seems too dramatic to say 50 homes. It's also saying too dramatic to say we don't know the impacts of the homes right now. The alignments could shift, which could change a lot. But that seems very outlandish to say that many homes are being affected.
Okay, thank you. The scoping process ends tomorrow. At the Sandag board meeting on June 28th, there was a friendly agreement reached to end the scoping period as scheduled and to undertake a value analysis process with all key stakeholders. What are the next steps and which stakeholders are considered key and might be included in this group?
So I can outline what we're thinking about right now. A value analysis process is a technical process to look at opportunities and to ultimately have a group coalesce around, hopefully, a range of alternatives to be studied. Again, it's not to know all the impacts because that comes future. Right now, the cities, affected cities are Del Mar, Solana Beach, the owner operators, MTS, North County Transit District, Caltrans as one of the other owners, would all coalesce with Sandag on a facilitated group. And that facilitated group would be given time and given the resources needed to come up with this range of alternatives. I've probably forgotten a couple other groups out there. I apologize.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure that we'll get a little more information on that soon. As reported on slide 17 in today's presentation, NCTD is a responsible agency under CEQA as it relates to the realignment project. Are jurisdictions such as Del Mar, Solana Beach, and the city of San Diego similarly considered to be responsible agencies?
So this has come up in the past is who's a responsible agent? It's clear North County Transit District is. It's clear that any entity whose lands are being affected, like for example, Caltrans, OA, but jurisdictions a responsible agency under SEQA is very discreet. It says a jurisdiction that has a discretionary approval over the project. We're not sure if the cities have any discretionary approvals. In the past, they have not. Sandag does not require any permits from the local jurisdictions. Therefore, they haven't been identified as a responsible agency. We are looking into that with our legal staff, though, and we'll have a more definitive answer than that in the future.
Thank you. I appreciate the answers to my questions. I have to assume that there may be more questions on the dais. Anyone? Thank you. Board Member Desmond?
Thank you very much. And Mario, this is mostly for you. I have a question for you, and I'm glad that you are at the helm and you get some new blood, new direction here. You, in my opinion, you inherited a kind of a strained organization that had some reputation issues, and so I'm glad that you're here to fix that. I'm happy to see you on board. But and welcome to North County. I'm glad that you're here. And my biggest concern is about Sandag and Sandag's integrity. Because of the fact, particularly here in North County, we've been made promises to, and I know I'm going to talk about roads at a transit meeting, but this is all about the transportation system, about the HOV lanes across the 78, which was approved in 2004, and you're collecting taxes on until 2048, and we still haven't seen that be a
Board Member
priority.
Desmond?
I'm not done. I'm getting to this. Don't worry.
Okay, thank you.
Don't worry, but it's not being done. So basically, for North County, it's an integrity issue with Sandag. And so with this project, you're going to have to go out to the people and to the public and ask for their confidence in you or in this agency to perform such a large task such as this. So my question is, what are you doing to fulfill past promises of Sandag so that when you go out to entities and go out to cities and you go out to look for their input, that they actually believe they can trust you and you're not going to break any promises?
Thank you for the question. I think this first step is me being here in front of you all and providing you an objective process where the governing boards of the different agencies are the ones who set policy and staff provides the information. Being humble about doing all the items and taking into consideration what Deputy Mayor Epson is bringing up in this specific project, proposing a value analysis study, bringing all the stakeholders in the room and providing all the information and being really objective. I think that's the first step, sir, to start gaining trust.
Well, that's sort of what's always been done, but it hasn't. Broken promises in the past are, I think, an anchor on your organization, and I think that needs to be remedied before moving on with, before you gain any trust, any future trust, or because the stuff you're doing is just kind of routine stuff that's already, you mentioned just routine stuff that's already happening. And quite frankly, I think more needs to be done if you want to get buy-in on these particular types of projects.
Thank you. Actually, we have an upcoming meeting, so that will be great.
I know.
Discussing this.
So
Yeah.
that was my leading question.
All right, is that it for your questions, Board Member Desmond?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay, I think Mayor Kranz, and we will flip around on the dais.
Thank you. I appreciate the presentation. And the questions from Deputy Mayor Edson, our chair, I thought were pretty thorough. One of the questions that she asked that I want to inquire a little bit more about has to do with the provenance of alternative A. It's my understanding that residents of Del Mar paid for their own engineering study to analyze that and provided that to Sandag. Is that true?
No, Sandag's engineers took the feedback from public, so from those workshops, and Sandag's engineers are the ones that drew the.
So there was some analysis, initial analysis to look at how deep you'd have to go and where the hole would, where the portals would be and things like that?
Yes.
Is there a reason that just the cost alone wouldn't have caused you to stop exploring that? I mean, because to Supervisor Desmond's point, the credibility of Sandag and the ability to raise revenue is a critical part of this process. Now, frankly, we're going to need a lot of money from the federal government as well as the state, but ultimately, taxpayers in the region are going to have to fork over a lot of money for this project. So I just am shocked that there would be any further analysis of an alternative that was twice as much as two of the others.
As part of the NOP process is to put input on that exact issue, which is it feasible? Are there factors that make it infeasible? Obviously, cost is one of them. Construction issues are another. Soil factors are another. So right now, we haven't precluded it. We're looking for feedback on what others in the region, both local, state, and federal governments are thinking about it.
So
we have stopped some of the engineering that right now we just need to look at the horizontal lines. And to go in depth and have in-depth engineering on the different alignments like geotech studies, that's not acceptable because we're not sure that it's even going to be there. We can have, background information that will help us lead us to that. But we are cutting down until the value analysis affirms, deletes, edits, changes, whatever, the different alternatives. So then we can dive in what the NEPA and SICA require studies are. So that I did want to highlight.
I appreciate that. I have some comments about the value analysis, but I also want to go back to this question. Again, my understanding is that the fairgrounds, in order to do alternative A, the fairgrounds would be shut down for 5 years. Is that correct?
I mean, we just don't know that. There is, within the fairgrounds, there has to be construction of the subterranean station. So there would be a footprint we've identified.
Well, didn't the fair board send you guys some comments about this and indicate that the closure of the fair for several years would be a part of the process?
I mean, and we just don't know the details. I think it's all speculation.
It seems to me a colossal waste of money to study that particular alternative, but I am on the record as being strongly in favor of an I-5 alignment, and the city of Encinitas will be transmitting our letter requesting that alignment 1A be part of the study, and I'm very hopeful that that could be included because the I-5 alignment that would represent is the most certain way to address not only problems in Del Mar, but 50-year future problems in Encinitas along the Cardiff Bluffs. And, it would be a solution for San Clemente as well. So it's really critical, I think, that we include that. You made reference to the 2007 EIR that Los San Corridor undertook. In that study, the cities of Carlsbad and Leucadia both were identified as requiring grade separation projects, one at Leucadia Boulevard and one in the village of Carlsbad. Carlsbad has successfully advanced studies to identify the feasibility and the costs of a tunnel, a trench through their city. The city of Encinitas has not been able to afford any studies, so we are at, square one when it comes to grade separating Leucadia Boulevard. The impacts of grade separating Leucadia Boulevard would be significant on our city. So ultimately, the challenge that I have both on Sandag and NCTD is that I am elected by the people of Encinitas. And I am going to be advocating what I think is best for Encinitas. And so I don't think we should be, basing this study on bullet point number 2 on project objectives, which says maintain passenger rail service to train stations serving Solana Beach. I don't think that's what we should be basing this on at all. I think that we should look, and in fact, the value analysis should have the cities of Encinitas, Carlsbad, and Oceanside at the table as well, because the decisions that are made on this particular realignment are going to impact all our jurisdictions. So thank you very much.
Board Member Martinez?
First, I want to thank each of you for being here again. I know all the effort you've put in and I appreciate it. I don't have many questions. You'll see that our city has put together a very extensive NOP response. So I won't be repetitive in that. But I do have one question. I imagine we'll do comments after. Is that right? Okay. So when you talk, Mario, when you talk about your value analysis, that's a new term to me. My question is that mandatory? And if not, I appreciate it. I think it's a great idea. Was that your idea or is that something that needs to be done in this process?
It's not mandatory, but it is standard practice when you have complicated decisions that need to be vetted through different interests or stakeholders, let's put it like that. So it felt then that it was the right thing to do here because we have difference of opinions, we have concerns, and it also adds transparency to it as it shores up the environmental document process from any questions coming at the end or any legal concerns about it because it's proving that we're doing as much as we can in bringing in the different stakeholders, providing the technical information, and then being part of the development of the alternatives or evaluation of them.
I appreciate that. I never heard it before. You got on board. So my assumption is that's something you brought forward. If it is, I thank you for that. We look forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Garcia.
I apologize. I had to step out to take a phone call, an urgent phone call, so I missed part of the presentation. I just came in at the moment of the comments, so I'm not going to reiterate any of the questions or the comments that have been made, other than I have been reached out a number of times, and these concerns are very real, and I just wanted to reiterate that. I do want to thank you also for acknowledging the fact that it can be done better. And I agree with Supervisor Desmond that, Mario, you have come into an organization that has some difficulties to deal with, but nonetheless, I had the privilege of voting for you to come in for that job because I truly believe that you're the right person for that. So anyway, thank you for acknowledging that. And hopefully we will be able to find the best solution involving all the jurisdictions here. And if you want to bring the rail through Escondido, that would be nice too. I don't know if it'll cost anymore. Anyway, I just wanted to make sure that I was on the record that even all the way to Escondido, we are hearing concerns about that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And I just want to highlight the comment. Definitely any system needs redundancy. So in the future, at planning level studies, we should be looking into redundancy for our own rail connections. So just want to highlight.
Thank you. Are there any, okay, Board Member Contreras, and then I think we will go to Board Alternative Coleman.
Thank you all so much.
And these are questions right now.
Right.
So
I definitely have questions. Yeah.
Okay.
I would like to start with a thank you though. So, we can argue all we want about all the different alignments. One thing that's really concerning to me is, do we have an answer to the question, will NCTD continue to be the owner of the railroad? Because this is not just coming out of our funding. And I did talk to staff about this and I was like, maybe this is an ignorant question,
Yeah,
but
so
apparently there's a lot of nuances to it. So
if I can jump in on that. And I was going to reserve some comments for the end, but I'll plug this one in now since the question's being asked. And I very much appreciate that question. From my seat and what I would impress upon the board, which at the end of the day is fully the board's decision, is that no matter what alternative is chosen, NCTD is the common carrier. We own any outcome from this project. That shift will never move away from this agency. We cannot allow it to move away from this agency. And I would just sort of take that opportunity to make a comment that I had sort of plugged in for later, which is we have a lot of conversation about Sandag as a project owner. We have a lot of conversation about cities that are impacted by this. But the reality is the railroad is owned by NCTD. We are the deciders of what happens along this corridor. It's not Sandag, it's not the cities, it's the agency, our board of directors, people that are impacted by that. And so I appreciate the questions that continue to come up in that realm because, yes, we need to work in partnership with these things. I've been involved in mega projects in the past. I certainly appreciate the difficulty as it relates to trying to find enough information to put into an NOP to get out to the public. I do think in this case, there are a lot of questions that probably could have been added into the NOP that was not, that may have been able to help out Solana Beach and Del Mar and some of our other partners to sort of nail down those questions. But I think from my seat, we would 100% be the owner of that. And some of our responses in the NOP are very reflective of that, that in some of these alternatives, there are some significant capital upkeep requirements that would be an outcome of this project. And without the agreement of additional funding resources, either through SANDAG or other means, we would have some significant pushback on, quite frankly, some portions of all three of the options that were put out there. I do think that while NCTD has been very involved in the process of over the years, I'm talking right decade, the entirety of the time we've been doing this, as we continue to zero in on what that decision is, I really don't want it to be lost on our partners or our employees in the board that we should be one of the, if not the ultimate decider of what comes out of this project, because we are the most impacted by the outcome of things that our partners do. I would sort of note along those lines too that, and I think it was touched on in the slide that Mary talked about, that the STB has a significant amount of play as it relates to what the outcomes of this are. We can go through all of these processes, but at the end of the day, it comes down to what the STB wants to allow us to do as us being a common carrier and an owner of the railroad. The reality of the situation is BNSF and Amtrak have a lot of political pull as well. So if they see outcomes of some of these, whether it's these three, whether it's three more after these three, they have quite a bit of political pull and ability to be able to manage those processes from DC and stifle progress if we're not absolute about what we want from the terms of this project and the outcomes that will not only be associated with the cities that are impacted, but freight travel, national security, passenger service within the second busiest corridor in the nation. We're very fortunate as an agency to have someone that sits on the STB. That's, I think, a kudo to us as we move through on this piece. But long-winded way to answer your question that, yes, I think our assumption is that we would continue to be exactly the agency that we are today, which is the owner of the railroad.
And to add, the world I come from is you don't do a project without your owner operator being online. You don't just do something and then give it to somebody and tell it tough, figure out how you're going to do it or how you're going to maintain it, how you're going to operate it. That is a major, major no-no. So definitely comment well taken. And we are very interested the impacts to public, the resources, but also our comments in partnership with our owner operator. Our job is just to deliver something for you guys and the other operator. Yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted to bring that question today because one, I think it's critically important that we maintain our position as owner. But it doesn't seem like if the question is, are we guaranteed to be the owner of the railroad with this realignment? Is the answer yes, or is it actually there's a whole process to determine that? Which is the answer?
I think never say never, but I think our designation as the common carrier right now would probably be in the best interest of the STB or the groups involved to continue with that. I would imagine there would be some conversation about if we were to move the current alignment, who owns and maintains the original alignment. I think those conversations would probably take place as a function of the project as we moved along. But I think our stake in it would simply be that any place there is active rail, we would continue to be the full owner, operator, common carrier of that line.
Okay, and then so, the track that we currently have, that's our right of way. So then any alignment that we have, we're saying that that will be our right of way as well.
Yeah, I think there would be some conversation about adjacent property or land near the track. I think it would be fairly specific to how much land, if there was a move, if one of these was approved and we needed to move the alignment, somewhere within that alignment, we would own portions of that right of way. All of the right of way where the track is, but I think sort of adjacent to it, what else do we own? I think it's a good discussion that we would want to come back to the board and talk about who owns that, who maintains it, what easements or partnerships would we want to have as a collective agency.
Definitely, and I look forward to those conversations. Looking at the I-5 freeway alignment and hearing that, there's possibilities that things have to be shut down. And are we talking about the I-5 needing to be shut down in order to do an alignment there?
No, we won't be shutting down. None of our proposals involve shutting down freeway or even the belt outside of our planned absolute.
Okay. And my last question is, the rate of erosion has been significant. Where are we right now at the rate of erosion for the bluffs?
I'm not going to address that. I worked on the current Delmar Bluffs 5 stabilization with the North Canada Transit District staff. Right now, it's about 4 to 6 inches per year. What we're doing with the Delmar Bluffs 5 is taking out and securing the worst of that. So making sure that we're stable for 30 years in those high erosion areas. So that's what we're working on right now. Will we have to do emergency repairs in the future? Yeah, as long as this railroad's on that line, we'll have to continue to do emergency repairs and possibly even more projects in the future.
Okay. Yeah, just because I'm curious with alternative C, if we're looking at 4+ inches a year, I think the further we can get to away from the bluffs, but also maintain a competitive travel times and have decrease environmental impacts, decrease impacts on surrounding communities, that would be the best way. Because at 4 inches plus per year, there's no guarantee that it's going to maintain 4 inches. It's more than likely that it's going to accelerate. So I think that should be a data point that we should see for all these alternatives. How long, this is a huge project with a lot of money getting pulled together. I think the public deserves to know in 100 years, we may have to have this conversation all over again. So in any case, those are my questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Board Member Contreras. Board Member Coleman.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I'm going to backpack off of Karina's Board Member Contreras questions. Do we have a estimate or for the life expectancy of each alternative due to coastal erosion, or is that analysis still coming, or is that?
The design life of a project like this design 100+ years.
Okay.
So it's not only erosion, it's flood levels and making sure that this infrastructure isn't going to be inundated by sea level rise, stream flood.
Okay. It looks like alternative C is the most aligned with the existing alignment. Does that also mean that it will be using the most existing infrastructure?
Yeah, so you're right that alternative C does stay within the NCT right of way, especially through Los Penasquitos Lagoon. However, as I mentioned about resiliency, so the existing tracks are below the 100-year floodplain, and it's also sink track. So in order to make that section of tracks through the lagoon more resilient, we need to double track and also raise them up above.
Okay, and I'm assuming that that's going to play into the cost of effectiveness or efficiency of that. Okay, and then to that point, I might have missed it, but do we have an estimate of how much each alternative is going to cost?
I wrote it down.
Okay.
So again, this is just high-level construction costs, not right away at all. If you bear with me a second. I knew this would come up, so I wrote it down. So alternative A, the pink one up there, $4.4 billion. Alternative B, 1.9 billion. And alternative C, 2.3 billion.
I just add a caveat there. Alternatives B and B and C, there's a lot of other costs associated with that. Soft cost, development cost. There's escalation. We're not going to be building tomorrow. So the B and C would still fit within that $3 to $4 billion range for total project cost, and alternative A would be more, much, or $3 to $4 billion.
Got it. That's it. Thank you.
Board Member Jenkins.
I have a couple questions. I think the first one is for our CEO. So we have two major capital projects along this area. Do we put those on hold for now until we see what happens? And what does that do to the money already collected?
Yeah, we've had that conversation internally, and I really appreciate that question. There's two areas of concern for us there. The first one, which you mentioned, which is there could be a shelf life on some of the money. As we've already seen through the state budget and the freezing of SB 125, what we really don't want is some uncertainty on projects that probably should have already been off the ground or in process that are not, that we're trying to push forward right now, specifically on some of the double tracking or the bridge projects. I think internally we're having a conversation that as a result of the information that we receive from the NOP and we get closer to a draft environmental, we need to know the exact impacts of how this may completely transform either the lagoon project or some of the double tracking. And realistically, at least two of these alignments probably shift the way we think about double tracking in Miramar a little bit because it connects to that piece at some point in time. So I think we really need to get more information out of the NOP as we get closer to the draft environmental about what we're really dealing with in terms of a locally preferred alternative. Once we get to that space, I think we do probably need to have a conversation with the board about either shifting alternative, shifting what we're really trying to accomplish or moving forward with what we have.
And if I could just add, the San Diego Bridge in particular is a 108-year-old bridge. NCTD spends the most on maintenance of this bridge compared to the other rail bridges on the Los Angeles corridor. So it's critical that this bridge is replaced as soon as possible.
And so does that bridge remain in all three of these scenarios or only in the two?
I believe there's some conversation about whether or not that bridge would be required in option A.
Okay. So if A or B were to happen, it would be probably expeditious for the total project for North County Transit to get the bridge done.
In
It's A or B.
In B
B
or
or C,
C,
I'm
yes.
sorry, B or
Yeah,
C.
in B or C, it does. I think in A, it eliminates
Right.
the need for the bridge. The bigger issue for us, I think, which you alluded to, is we've invested a lot of time and energy, and there are placeholders for that. And where would we shift that money pretty quickly, which has been an issue for us to try to get money reallocated when we want to shift on a project. We don't want to lose that funding no matter what scenario is picked, but definitely in a B or C scenario, we would need to charge ahead because that is a critical piece of that corridor that needs to be resolved.
Right, okay. And then there was comments, I think by you, Sean, about the critical components of BNSF and Amtrak and our responsibilities to them. So when you mentioned the entities that would be involved in this future stakeholders group, Del Mar, Solana Beach, MTS, NCTD, and Caltrans, shouldn't BNSF and Amtrak be part of that? Or
So they
do
are.
we represent them?
We represent them.
Okay.
It probably wouldn't be out of bounds if they truly wanted to be a part of that working group. I think they're fairly reliant on us as the owner of the railroad to represent their best interest. We have had some conversation with both entities and have received some commitment from at least one of them that they want to be involved in the process with us as we are their representative in the process. I think the interesting piece of it is, which I think we already know, is the Class 1 railroads and Amtrak have some jurisdiction under CFR. And we need to be very aware of what that means if we start to go down a path that the Class 1s and Amtrak don't agree with. I think they have the federal ability to be able to step in and at least seek injunction or lay claim to what some outcomes of the project they would want to see become.
Okay. And then there was a comment made, if I understood it correctly, about not knowing who the lead federal agency will be, and that it would take 6 months probably to get them up to speed. Do you think the federal government works within 6 months to get up to speed?
Good point. Well, first of all, it could be Federal Rail Administration, it could be some of the, John was mentioning. There is conversations with the state on the the federal agencies delegating to the state agencies.
Okay.
That has happened on highways. Caltrans has NEPA lead delegation for federal highways. So they're looking into a state agency that could do that. If that's the case, and if it's a state agency that we already have had partnerships with, that could expedite the process.
Okay. And then I think my last question is, was a little confused. I think there was a question or comment made about any of these tunnels. You mentioned the mileage on each of them, but as far as the height, did I understand it was 7 to 8 feet on the height of the tunnel, or 7 to 8 stories that is impacted by the tunnels?
No, so we want to maintain connectivity to the Del Mar Fairgrounds. So in order to construct the underground platform for the fairgrounds, it would be 70, 80 feet below ground. That's for the
70 to 80 feet,
70 to 80. Yes.
70 to 80.
And the depth
Okay.
of the tunnel.
If I might, that's only with alternative A. Alternatives B and C, the platform would remain at grade.
Okay, but they all have tunnels.
Yes, and the depths of the other tunnels range, but some places it's deep, 300 feet deep.
I'm sorry, how many?
300 feet.
Okay. 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 And then my other comment is, there's obviously eminent domain issues on whatever is decided. That process, can take years per property. Some of us have probably dealt with that. So is that factored into your time frame? Because I think I don't know if this is true or not, but I thought I read somewhere where this is going to happen by 2035. Is that logical?
Well, I think that's something that's up for evaluation. So within our regional plan, we have this tunnel implemented by 2035. That's as we evaluate this process going forward, it could be pushed out, but we want to move this project forward. And in relation to property acquisition, like that's sort of after all this environment. We're not even.
Correct. Correct. Okay. But each property can take a very long time.
Yeah, and normally with projects of this size and at this early stage, the schedules are aspirational. You may not even have the funding lined up, right? You may not get some grants. It's a journey, and it begins with the first step. And the first step was the NOP and all the planning studies that were done before. But it's a journey, and it's going to keep changing. This is a process where we're getting the input to figure out the next step, which is start evaluating, having a couple of alternatives. A couple, I don't mean two, but several alternatives where the team can do what's required by law, the analysis on some feasible alignments, and move it forward to the next phase.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the board for Mayor Krantz?
Follow up on Board Member Jenkins' questions related to negotiation of easements. So these alignments, the green line, the blue line, essentially the property owners on above those lines own easements through to the center of the earth, so to speak. So do we have a number? How many on the green line, how many property owners will we be negotiating easement rights with? And the same question for the blue line. Do we have any idea what those numbers are?
It's, I mean, we don't know what the numbers are of how many particular parcels, but I mean, this is very typical for subway construction for subterranean easements to be acquired. That was also one of the reasons why we have A, because that avoids going under more private properties than tier 2.
I understand how A evolved. I think it initially involved as an above grade bridge structure that would take the train over to the freeway. So all the pictures before the bomb dropped on Solana Beach, it was going to use that Del Mar Bridge and then hang a left. I certainly know why the folks in Del Mar didn't want that, but the other question, so it's safe to say it's hundreds of property owners that somebody be negotiating with, maybe thousands. Goes through Del Mar Heights there, goes through Del Mar Heights, a lot of negotiations. Yes. Okay. The other question I had, I recall this agency was diligently pursuing Del Mar Bluffs 5 and 6. What is the status? I know 5 is under construction. 6, we have shovel-ready plans?
I can address that. So as part of the Del Mar Bus 5 discussions with the California Coastal Commission, we had indicated them, we'd like to secure the bluffs out there. And what they come back with is, what's the highest erosion areas? What's the most critical? That's what's shown in Del Mar Bluffs 5. That's what we're constructing right now. The moderate and low areas, that is a future Del Mar Bluffs 6. We have ideas. We don't have schematics for that because the California Commission was very clear that they're not going to approve future projects unless we have a concerted effort to move the rail off the bluffs.
So when you say 30 years worth of coastal railroad corridor on the bluffs there, you're making the 30-year statement based upon the completion of 5, but would 6 be required in order to get 30 more years out of the coastal corridor?
So the design life for Del Mar Bluffs 5 is 30 years. That's what we're constructing right
I
now.
see.
The other areas of bluff, we don't know.
We don't know.
We might have an emergency there tomorrow, next year, in 10 years.
Yeah.
But they're not as secure as the area we're making secure right now. We're Del Mar Bluffs 5.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Martinez?
I
Do you have a
said I
follow-up
wasn't going to
question?
ask any questions, but I'll get eaten alive by my residents if I don't. So is it true? So one of the statements was that the proposed portal on Route B would go under Jimmy Durante. But isn't it true that Jimmy Durante would have to be elevated for that portal to go under Jimmy Durante?
Yeah, so we have to reconstruct Jimmy Durante because that's where the portal has to come. So there
Right,
has
so
to
would
be
it be
constructed onto a spread. And as it's shown in the 2023 alternatives analysis, the Jimmy Durante would.
Right. And I know you can't say for certain, but how high would that be? Because I've heard anything from 30 feet to 70 feet.
No, not that high.
Just give me a range.
Yeah, I think it's feet to 20. Not, and it's like Jimmy Durante's on a terrace, right? One side is lower. These are a detail that.
No, Jimmy Durante isn't, you're confusing Camino Del Mar, I think, with Jimmy Durante. Jimmy Durante doesn't have 2 levels. It has 2 lanes, 1 level,
Yeah,
one continuous level.
At the point where we're looking where the tunnel portal could go, there it is sloped down with the median.
Right, right. The reason I say that is because some community members thought that was kind of sneaky and disingenuous. So I just wanted to clarify that. You don't know how high, it could be as high as 20 feet. Is that correct?
It's not going to be 7.
Okay, thanks. And okay, and how high is a normal portal in width and height?
So that's something we have to have for the clearance of trains that are operating on it. And so we need basically the tunnel diameter for the board tunnel is about 28 feet diameter. But the portals itself, they would be constructed a little bit different. And so we can have a little bit less than that. 23 feet is
In total for portal, that's it?
23 feet high. And then the width is, I mean, when we're getting into like real details here that.
Just roughly, what are portals? What are usually portals in height?
In height?
I mean, in width, I'm sorry.
In width. So we have twin bore tunnel configurations, 28 feet on one side and then one tunnel diameter in the middle to separate the twin bores, and then another 70, 80 feet wide.
78, okay. All right, thank you.
Great. I have a couple of clarifying questions. So under the no project Bluffs 6, you mentioned that the Coastal Commission is not going to approve Bluffs 6, something that we've counted on to continue to secure the rails while the tunnel option, whatever it is, can be built. And you use the wording unless there were efforts made to move the tracks off the bluff. So does this give a little wiggle room to actually having Bluff 6 approved if there's more time needed as we go through this process? Because I do believe that there is an effort ongoing.
So the no project under the EIR says, what's the most likely occurrence if the project doesn't move forward? The most likely occurrence is there's additional slides, we'll do additional projects. Delmar Bluff 6 is like. The challenge for us as staff is that we have a permit that's been issued that says move it by 2035. And so we know that's going to be a big hurdle to get a Delmar Bluff 6 through. But I think that's part of the challenge for us with working with Coastal Commission.
Okay, thank you for that. And also, there was, Danny, you were discussing escalation costs on B and C. I noticed there was a footnote in the NOP regarding escalation for all alternatives, not just B and C. And soft costs are defined in this study so that that shouldn't be different for A, B, or C. Is that correct?
Yeah, I just want to make it clear that the costs that are reported are, I mean, they are apples to apples, but that's construction cost.
Okay.
And that doesn't include any of those.
Okay, and so the escalations, are they any different? You know, is it just a percentage? For example, if A is 4.14 billion, does that mean it might escalate as high as 8 billion? If B and C are 1.85 and 2.2, would they escalate up to double?
I mean, I think there's a lot of variables there, but you know, general rule of thumb, it's somewhat proportional. I mean, depends on, there's many, many variables. I mean, mostly when you start construction and how long.
Having recently remodeled a house and having my budget double, I kind of get that. Which alternatives feature 300-foot deep tunnels?
That would be alternative B. And A
B?
might be.
Did you say B?
B, yes.
Okay.
That goes under the highest.
Okay, thank you. So that's it for questions. I'm going to move to comments. I know that Board Member Bhat Patel has some comments, so we'll start at this end and just work our way around.
Sure, thank you. And thanks for the work on this and just the update in terms of where we're at. I just wanted to agree with some of the feedback that we've received that from fellow board members to make sure that all of our jurisdictions are involved in the decision-making process, but also that they're key stakeholders in terms of the community feedback that we're receiving. So I appreciate that being elevated. Another piece that I just wanted to make sure that we address, and I did hear staff mention this a couple of times, is that it sounds like there will be a comprehensive cost to benefit analysis to really make sure that we determine what alternative is going to be economically feasible. And then the thing around the alignments, I know Mayor Kranz mentioned that, and it's something that our city is also in alignment with, is to make sure that, we're really looking at and considering the I-5 alignment from south of Sorrento Valley up into Orange County, and the I-15 alignment connecting to the San Diego Airport and north of San Clemente. But other than that, I'm looking forward to continued discussions on this, and thank you for allowing me the time to make those comments.
Of course. Board Member Martinez?
Yeah, thank you. I think you can gather that all of us look forward to getting the tracks moved off the bluff. And although we appreciate all the work that's been done on reinforcing the bluff, it sure has changed the looks of the bluff and taken away a lot of the natural beauty of the bluff. So we look forward to getting those removed at some point. I also want to be on record as saying is that Del Mar, the city of Del Mar, has taken no preference of route. We are going to respect the NOP, and we look forward to the value analysis. That is a really wonderful thing that I think Mario brought to this process. But I also think that it's important to know that every single one of these routes have economical, environmental, quality of life, private property impacts, and safety impacts. And I hope that that is all respected. So again, I've said this publicly and I'm going to say it again. I don't think it benefits any of us, the stakeholders, and particularly the two cities and the Fair Board, to be fighting amongst us. I think that all of this affects all of us. I think of us as relatives and sisters. So I'm going to hope that we get a route that is the least impactful. And my gut feeling is that Sandag is going to have to look for very dramatic different routes. So thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Kranz, any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Board Member Joyce?
First of all, I just want to say thank you to all of the staff that has worked on it. I think I think we hear a lot from the public that it's all too common these days to question the motives of staff when they bring something forward that you don't like. I think it's really important to say that I think staff is working to the best of their abilities to find the options that work best for the people that we all serve. So I just want to say again, thank you. And to the extent that you feel questioned in that manner, know that it is not universal and that we really have a lot of support for you. So my concern only with what I've heard about the next step, which is the value analysis step, is that I worry a little bit about who's not at the table. Our CEO's comments help that feeling because I feel a little more reassured that NCTD's broader interest will be represented. Those interests are the ones that we all serve as a board member of NCTD. My constituents who use the transit to get to work, who rely on it on a very basic and day-to-day basis, are absolutely stakeholders that should be considered. I worry a little bit about Del Mar and Solana Beach getting into an arm wrestling match. I'm glad that NCTD will be there to be weighing in because this is important to all of us, like we said. So from my perspective, both the present and future ridership is of the highest consideration. Their considerations on both environmental and their day-to-day life are present and of the utmost importance. So thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. I have a couple comments. As we heard in the presentation, the district does not favor or oppose any of the alternatives presented in the NOP. Instead, NCTD's response to the NOP share the district's priorities and highlight the lack of information included so far. As a board member, I wholeheartedly support the district's desire to avoid or minimize construction impacts to passenger and freight services and to improve rail operations. Essentially, these are NOP objectives 1, 2, and 5. As a board member and deputy mayor of Solana Beach and someone who regularly rides the coaster and walks our beautiful coastal rail trail, I'm very familiar with the Solana Beach station including the rail trench. I have deep concerns that the significant construction within the narrow Solana Beach rail trench proposed in alternative A will slow trains, result in delays, add unhealthy levels of dust, noise, and pose safety concerns during construction. Known facts about alternative A that were not considered in the NOP include the overall project costs, and those were touched on here today. 2x the number of years of construction, up to 2x the amount of time. And as is included in the district's NOP response, the impacts to travel time for all forms of rail transportation presented by each alignment. Also missing in the NOP was not wasting existing or future low sand corridor investments, such as the trench in Solana Beach, which costs tens of millions in year 1999 dollars, the upcoming critical replacement of the San Diego Lagoon Rail Bridge, additional double track, and the new Del Mar Fairground seasonal events platform, together a $254 million regional investment intended to increase ridership to fairgrounds events and reduce GHGs. And then there is the Solana Beach Coastal Rail Trail Linear Park, a $9 million investment and attraction used daily by residents and visitors alike. At the June 26th Solana Beach City Council meeting and on Monday at the Low Sand Board meeting, Sandag staff confirmed that with Alternative A, all of these hundreds of millions of dollars in investments would become obsolete. And not mentioned anywhere are the billions of dollars in annual economic income and multipliers to the San Diego region that will be lost due to Alternative A's impacts. The thought of the wasted taxpayer dollars and loss of economic income make my fiscally conservative skin crawl. But enough about money. I sit on LoSAN as the representative for the North County Transit District and sit on NCTD as the representative for my city, and currently sit on Sandag for NCTD. But the real reason I chose to sit on all these boards is that I believe in public transportation. I love the train. I love the tourism it brings to my community. It serves the needs of my residents who commute and the desires of those who choose to ride for pleasure. As a board member, a council member, and a train nerd, I share the district's goal of avoiding interruption to rail service. But switching my hat to deputy mayor, I will share that the primary concerns of Solana Beach are environmental and economic. Of the 6 project objectives listed on Sandag's slide 8, objectives 3 and 4 are minimizing community impacts and avoiding or minimizing impacts on biological, cultural, and recreational resources, including publicly owned parks. In Solana Beach, Alternative A will result in direct and indirect impacts to 60+ naturally affordable residences and numerous small businesses located on South Cedros Avenue, all of which back immediately up to, and in most cases utilize, the east side of the rail right-of-way. These include businesses like the Belly Up. So the Rolling Stones never came in the front door. They need to use the NCTD right-of-way, which is the back alley. And that's where the employees on South Cedros Park, it's where the trash pickup is. So it's really impactful if this entire right-of-way needs to be used to construct Alternative A. And that was what was explained would need to happen when we spoke with Sandag previously on the record at the Solana Beach City Council meeting. At that June 26th Solana Beach Council meeting, Sandag officials acknowledged the immediate proximity and potential for direct and indirect impacts to these properties, yet they neglected to include mention of them or any property impacts attributable to Alternative A in the NOP. Also not considered in the NOP were impacts to property along the west side of our narrow rail trench. The Solana Beach Coastal Rail Trail Linear Park is a regional recreational resource, which is located parallel to and within NCTD's right-of-way. Also west of the existing rail trench are multi-unit dwellings, businesses, including our only 2 hotels and even our city hall, all immediately across from the railroad right-of-way on South Highway 101. Clearly, alternative A does not meet NOP objectives 3 and 4, and I must question what all this means for mitigation and land acquisition. The NOP also does not consider the time, the impacts to the Solana Beach community, and as I mentioned earlier, the investment that already went into the existing grade separated rail trench and double tracking. As was shared with Sandag at the July 26th Solana Beach City Council meeting, local businesses on South Cedros struggled mightily. Even some of them failed during the grade separation project, which lasted only a couple of years. If the project for alternative A is 7, 10, 12, 14 years, I can't imagine what this impact would be. Solana Beach does not have big box stores. We're all mom and pop. We've kept it that way. It's our community character. So it's pretty dramatic. I could go on and on, but I'll close by expressing my shock and disappointment that before adding alternative A to the NOP, Sandag did not engage stakeholders beyond Del Mar, not my city, not the city of San Diego, not NCTD, LoSan, the fairgrounds, BNSF, the port, or the DOD. Had Sandag done so, I don't believe alternative A would have made it into the NOP, especially since it meets only a portion of the project objectives in the NOP. As I mentioned earlier, Sandag says it meets 4. I have a hard time counting more than 3. Of course, this would be a moot point considering alternatives B and C meet all 6 of the project objectives. Speaking as a council member and not as chair of NCTD, I do not endorse any of the alternatives, but I do strongly oppose alternative A. I'm sympathetic to the concerns raised by the city of Del Mar and their residents and hope that Sandag will do everything within their power to quickly provide clear, transparent details necessary to counter the misinformation that's been spread and calm the fears of resident stakeholders. So thank you for your patience. I asked a lot of questions and I spoke a lot today, which is, I usually reserve my speak and allow my board to have a little more input. So thank you for that. With that.
Sure. Could I
yes, sir.
request the clerk distribute the PowerPoint presentations that we received today? Thank you.
Madam Clerk?
The presentation that was shown is on our website. I can send you a link if you prefer.
And I think we received that last night, didn't we? Yeah, it came
That
in
is
late
correct.
last night. Okay, so next on our agenda, we have our executive director's report.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, members of the board. I would just like to take a quick opportunity to wrap up the Sandag piece and the conversation we're having right now. I do want to thank Mario and the team for coming out. I've been involved in mega projects before, and I think the biggest piece that can be difficult for organizations is managing expectations in the NOP when you really want that public input versus the information that you can give, information that you want to give. My cautionary tale, I think, on this one would be because of some of the shifts that we've had with the alignments that exist in the current efforts that are being out there. You really need to come armed with some data and information on that. I think anytime you sort of deviate from a plan that you've had for about a decade, people are going to want to know impacts to their houses and how these things are going to be affected. And I know that's a tough conversation, a tough sell sometimes, but at a 50,000-foot level, I think we need to be able to have that information and that data at the ready. Once we sort of move out of the NOP process, and I will say it is refreshing to see the amount of public input that has gone into this process. I think that speaks volumes of, one, the importance of the project itself, but two, how our residents feel about the impacts of the projects themselves on their own communities. And so I always very thankful anytime we get a lot of public feedback on those items. Once we get out of the NOP piece and Sandag is able to manage the information that comes out of that, once we get closer to the draft environmental impact review, I think this board will have a huge role to play in deciding not only the impacts to the cities and the communities, but the alignment long range for NCTD that will impact freight movement throughout the corridor. So there's a lot of economic development issues and opportunities that exist around that passenger rail corridor, sustainability, and national security, quite frankly. So all those things will come before this board. And, I appreciate all the feedback that was given today by our board. I think it's important for our partners in Sandag to hear that, take that back and do what they need to do with it. Outside of that, I wanted to take an opportunity to introduce Lilia Montoya, who started on Monday. She is our new Chief Operations Officer of BUS. She's back there in the back row. Lilia comes to us by way of Long Beach Transit. She was most recently Deputy Chief Executive Officer there, so we're excited to have her on board. Did want to take an opportunity to thank Chris Orlando. He's been running bus operations in the absence of a bus COO. Chris has done really great work on that with the operations team to keep it moving in the right direction, and appreciate his efforts on that. Starting this week, we started open loop payment on Pronto. So credit card payments on the Pronto platform. You can use Apple Pay, Google Pay, Samsung Pay. Pretty excited about that. It went very seamless. Want to take an opportunity to thank the planning team who worked on that. They did a real phenomenal job of making sure that went seamless. So that's all the way across the network. That's MTS and NCTD. So kudos on that. We've had some all hands meetings across our organization with all the employees. We went out to all of our facilities and had some conversations about a lot of things we talked about at Board Forward, strategic opportunities for the organization and really what we're trying to do. Received very well. Our employees continue to do amazing work out there in the field and over at our worldwide headquarters over here on mission. So big kudos to our employees. Del Mar races, we're going to see you there. Whoever wears the biggest hat on the train is going to get kicked off because it'll take up 2 seats. No, I'm just kidding. Come dressed, ready to go. We'll have some folks down on the platform and helping out on that, but really excited about that. Comic-Con's coming up next week. We have on Tuesday a press conference at the Convention Center where Chair Edson and Chair Whitburn of MTS will speak about public transit and their connectivity to Comic-Con. So if you want to come down and join us, please do that. Big thanks to Escondido City Council for having us out last night. We got to, that was I think the last of the tours we've made in the cities. And I'm very thankful to all the cities that have invited us out and given us an opportunity to speak, and appreciate all the feedback that we received there. And big thanks to all the city staff. This week we've had great conversations with Mayor Kranz, Del Mar City staff, Solana Beach. I mean, we're constantly having these good meetings about things that we're doing at the agency and moving forward. And I really appreciate that. It's been a good couple weeks of meetings. The Caltrans Procurement Resource Fair in August will be at the District 11 office. So if you're interested in finding out what they have going on, or if there's some interest between projects that you may be doing in your city with Caltrans, send some folks down to the Procurement Resource Fair. We'll be there as well. And that is all I have for today, unless anybody has any questions for me.
Any questions? I just have one. Are you going to wear your Spider-Man, costume for the Comic-Con?
I got to figure out who I'm going to be for Comic-Con. Chris and I are going to go as a package deal. So we got to figure out what we're going to wear.
Oh, I think I'm so glad I'm going to be at this. Thank you. Board members, do you have any brief comments to offer? I have only one. It's peak summer ridership on the Lausanne Pacific Surfliner. Having traveled up and back to the Lausanne board meeting on Monday, I can attest to the fact that the trains are getting full. Beginning July 20th, 2 additional round trips will be added between LA Union Station and the Santa Fe Depot. So, Suhel, do we have any remaining public comments?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you. At this time, public registration to speak on public comments, communications will end. I will remind the board that we are dark in August. Woohoo. Our next scheduled meeting will be in September. It will be September 19th, 2024 at 2 p.m. We're scheduled to move back to the NCTD boardroom located at 810 Mission Avenue here in Oceanside. So please enjoy your breaks. This meeting is adjourned.